Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and all of you meat popsicles out there, and welcome to Afternoons with the Ambassador, Council of One's Babylon 5 review. And with me, as always, I've got my two good friends, Adega Outlaw, Doctor and author, Adega Outlaw, and Mountains of Elysium. Gentlemen, good afternoon. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for waiting. To the chat, LGD Pixels, thank you. If you are still, in fact, in the chat, thank you for popping in. And today we're going to continue our review of Season 1 of Babylon 5, and today we are talking about the episode called Legacies. So, that all being said, gentlemen, thank you for your patience. Thank you for being here, and it's Wednesday, it's already been a week. Anyway.
Yeah, a long week. It feels like you should be putting up the Christmas tree already. It's been that kind of week.
Yes. Yes, indeed. So,
is it morning already, Mother?
Oh, Lordy. Well, guys, I'm going to just say two things very briefly. One, I hate doctors. Not the doctor that's in this stream, but I hate doctors. And two, I hate long, slow as hell coal trains. Because if it hadn't been for those two things, I could have started on time today. Because our soon-to-be ex-doctor nearly got Madam Ambassador, well, I don't mean to use a lot of hyperbole, but he almost got her killed because of his stupidity. I'm gonna vent for a second or two, and then we'll get into the review. Madam Ambassador has been dealing with an upper respiratory infection, which, because of our dear darling doctor's stupidity, turned into bronchitis. Then he ordered a chest X-ray, which we went and got done. And then after that, after driving Madam Ambassador to the hospital and back home, we found out from our doctor that he called in a prescription for steroids. Now, Madam Ambassador is diabetic. And any doctor who is worth his has a lick of sense knows that you do not give a diabetic steroids. You give them cough medicine for bronchitis. So late last night, we had to drive to the ER and get her blood sugar under control because of our doctor's stupidity. Now, the only good thing that came out of that trip to the ER was the fact that one of the nurses said, well, there's a doctor here at this hospital who I highly recommend. He is very, very good. So we have checked into him to see if he is covered by our insurance. And thankfully, he is. So we're going to be switching doctors and getting away from the idiot that almost got my wife killed. So, and then I had to drive this morning over to the local Walmart to get Madam Ambassador's cough medicine prescription filled, and they told me it was going to be 45 minutes to an hour. But on the way there, I got caught by a stupid, slow as hell coal train. So, ergo, why we are a little bit late this afternoon. But again, I thank you all for your patience. I thank you all for being here. And that being said, guys, let's talk about something fun. Let's get into this episode, Legacies. So, where do y'all want to begin?
I want to begin by saying when you choose a doctor, make sure he comes highly recommended. Number two thing is, when you go into the office, if it feels bad, it is bad. Leave immediately. Number 3, if the doctor does not do an exam, it is not your doctor. All right, I'm done.
Thank you, Adega, and I appreciate that. And coming from someone whose medical opinion I highly value, I appreciate that wholeheartedly. And to the chat, Dave G Sound, good to see you, Dave G. I hope you're having a better day than I am, although it's better now that I am home and with Madam Ambassador and two of my good friends. So, anyway, we are coming towards the end of Season 1, and this is where it really starts to get fun. So, guys, let's dive into this episode. Let's break it down. Let's dissect it. And let me bask in some nerdiness for a little while and get my mind off of life.
This is an episode of lots and lots and lots of foreshadowing.
And also, fun fact about this episode, this is another episode that was directed by our good friend, Bruce Seth Green, and also, if I read the credits right, was written by D.C. Fontana. who has very strong ties to Star Trek. So I say to J. Michael Straczynski, bravo, sir, for bringing someone with such a high pedigree of Star Trek onto your show. And everybody loves Seth Green. Let's just be honest here. Whether it's Buffy, whether it's this, whether it's Robot Chicken, Seth Green is always a win. Oh, and Austin Powers. Can't forget about Austin Powers.
It really is for me, it was an excellent episode. It was heavy, as well as heavy on foreshadowing. It was heavy on world building.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that a 13-year-old could be left on her own in down below with none of the station security or facilities or anyone looking out for her, it says a lot about the world they exist in.
Yeah, that was one of the my favorite parts of this episode was the story, the B story with Elisa Belden, and of course you had Commander Ivanova and Talia Winters button heads again. But by the episode, they go and have a cup of coffee, which I think was actually a nice touch. And we also get introduced to, I think, a great character in B5, and that's Nehruin. And to the chat, Purple Valkyrie, Purple Lady, is good to see you, ma'am. I hope you are doing well. I am sorry I missed you and Samantha Joe's stream this morning, but I will catch it on the replay. So thank you, as always, for being here, and thank you all for your support. But yeah, honestly, this episode introduces us to, I think, a great character for B5, and that is Nehruin. Because, yeah, he can be hot-headed. Yeah, he can be a pain in the ass as far as a Minbari goes. But he is a really great, honestly, he is one of my favorite characters from the show, to be honest with you.
He's definitely my favorite Minbari for sure.
Oh, yeah.
I'd second that.
He's definitely probably one of the most intelligent, even out of the Great Council. He is very, very considerate of his people, but he's also, contrary to the way it may seem at times, he has an open enough mind to be able to see reality of what's going on. He gets pushed on several occasions, but he's an outstanding character.
Yes. And I don't remember the name of the actor who plays Nehruin, but this guy, I'm amazed he did not get more work. And that's the truth.
Yeah.
Well, of course, I would be surprised if he's been in half a dozen things that we just never heard about.
Well, he got one episode in Excalibur.
Oh, that's okay.
He was I can't remember if he was a reporter or what he was. I think he was a reporter and got infested with that psychic alien.
Okay. But yeah, and again, this episode, as you both have already mentioned, goes into a lot of world building, and goes into a lot of foreshadowing of things to come. And, this is our first time that we get this is another instance where we get some more foreshadowing of the rift that has started to form in Minbari society, because Delenn talks to Sinclair about it at one point during the episode when she's talking about the Earth Minbari War, and the fact that the Warrior Cast wasn't terribly thrilled with the religious cast power play to say, yeah, it's time to end this war, and the Warrior Cast is like, we hate you, we don't like you, you all suck. And to the chat, 14 Barber, is good to see you, sir. Thank you for popping in. So,
I'm just wondering how much of Nehruin's hostility was more towards Delenn than actually at the humans, because he was very belligerent and very, not a very diplomatic. And I'm just wondering, was that more aimed at Delenn than at Sinclair or at any of the humans?
That's a really, really fair point, because he softens up to Sinclair far faster than he ever does to Delenn. It takes 4 seasons before he softens up to Delenn. Well, yeah, almost 4 full seasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it isn't until towards the end of his life that he actually softens up to Delenn and everything during that one episode where they're in the what's the name of that thing? The fire wheel or something like that.
Right.
I can't remember.
Right.
Oh, did I have it right? Okay.
Yeah, but it's the episode before that when he's actually, well, you don't see it. They don't tell you about it, but that's when he's making plans with Delenn. He knows the whole thing that he's actually going to go against his clan leader for the benefit of this Minbari, and he understands, you know what, maybe Delenn's been right all along.
Very
And
true.
it goes to show he is the one who reaches for Sinclair's hand, not the other way around. When he offers him his hand, he offers him in human fashion, which goes to show he has the respect for Sinclair. Well, plus one thing I found is in that episode where it's at Grey 17, where he beats up where they had the ceremony, and he beats up Marcus.
Yes.
It just goes to show how strong Sinclair is, that Sinclair beats him in the fist fight.
Yeah, that is a thing, because most humans toe-to-toe with a Minbari couldn't do that.
Yeah, very true. Well, and the thing you have to remember about Marcus, he was trained to fight like a Minbari. He was trained in the warrior caste way or the warrior way of a Minbari warrior. So knowing their style, knowing their technique, even though I get the impression that Minbari are physically stronger than humans are. I get that impression, or maybe they have a way of blocking out pain on a level that humans can't. I mean, I don't know Minbari physiology. Let's just be honest here. And
in a lot of ways, they are superior. They have greater physical strength. They have a higher tolerance and endurance to blood loss and pain. There are a few things where humans are superior, but overall, toe-to-toe, they tend to be stronger.
Yeah. And to the chat, Captain Trek and Mac World Entertainment Trade, both of you, thank you for being here, gentlemen. I'm glad that you are here. So, but yeah, the one part of this episode that I really enjoyed was seeing the exploration of what it's like for a freshly discovered telepath to try and find their way forward, and in terms of Lisa building. And the thing with this is, I like the fact that Ivanova is like, I want to help this young woman. She's like, I want to do everything in my power to give her options. And even though she kind of steers her away from the Narn and everything, I think honestly, Elisa ended up where she needed to be, and that was with the Minbari. I mean, yeah, she could have bucked the trend and everything and gone with the Psi Corp, but honestly, even though we don't necessarily see her again in any of the later seasons, which I think was honestly kind of a shame. That was a dropped plot thread that I think could have at least been tugged on at least once or twice more. You get the impression that she is where she wants to be, or where she needs to be in terms with the Minbari. And at first she's out for she's looking at this from financial gain and what have you. But in the end, she realizes that she can do the most good and she can be the most comfortable with the Minbari. I mean, even though when she does her unintentional scan of the lens of mind, even though it seems like the lens being duplicitous or being dishonest or whatever, she still gets the impression that working with the Minbari would be for her benefit, and honestly, is the direction that she needed to go. And honestly, I think the fact that Talia and Ivanova are able to agree to disagree or end this situation amicably was a good move and everything on the part of the writers and in terms of the story. So, gentlemen, anything you want to piggyback or anything different you want to bring up or anything in terms
Actually,
of that?
quite a bit, yeah. For the first part, just this girl was someone that was orphaned on the station and had no clue that she was a latent or a telepath that was getting ready to express herself. Sometimes the people in that society would express their abilities once they hit puberty, and that was the nature of this kid. But my thing isn't so much that she chose because of financial reasons, she had been on her own, and she was always working on it. And it shows evidence, her stealing, keeping in practice of doing what she could do. She had an independent mind. None of the options except the Minbari allowed her the same amount of independence. Where on Minbar, she would have been given complete freedom. That, I think, was her major motivation more than anything.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that's a very good point, because with Psi Corp, she would have been so strongly regulated, the life would have been quite literally sucked out of her. And with the Narn, she saw Narn for what it was, and she saw the Narn for who they were.
Yep, and both of those offered her money, where the Minbari weren't offering her any money at all, just the goodness of people's hearts to take care of her.
Yeah.
So it was the freedom she was after.
Yeah, and I think oftentimes freedom can be a much more
liberty or death.
Yeah, can be a much more enticing opportunity rather than monetary gain. Because honestly, you can have all the money in the world, but if you don't have freedom, it don't mean jack diddly squat. And with the Minbari, even though she wouldn't have gotten a lot of financial gain, she had the opportunity to live her life as she wanted, to use her gifts and everything as a benefit, and to learn everything. And let's be honest here. I think working with Minbari telepaths, she might be able to unlock more of her potential than she would have with Psi Corp, even though we have made the position very clear that in a lot of ways human telepaths are somewhat stronger, are a lot stronger than other races telepaths are. But at the same time, I think Elisa going with the Minbari, not only is she going to benefit and everything in terms of her freedom, but if you consider the culture of the Minbari, they are a very spiritual, a very introspective species. And I think that is something that for someone like her is a good opportunity, is actually a great opportunity for her to grow as a person. I mean, if you talk in terms of talking about her having to be on her own for so long, being part of a community, being a part of a world that allows her to have her independence, but also allows her to explore the richness and the fullness of Minbari culture. I think that's a great opportunity right there. And not only bringing her Earth culture with her as well and everything, and giving the Minbari a better look at what maybe not necessarily a normal or a typical human is like, but giving them a better look at how we as humans tick. Because Delin says it herself. There is a very sorely lacking need for relations between humans and Minbari. And Lisa Belding going to Minbar, being amongst the Minbari people, is an opportunity that both sides gain.
There's also the thing about with humans and the Psi Corp, there was the whole balance between freedom of thought and also the right to privacy, where those didn't play as strongly of a role in Minbari society.
Yeah, because I get the impression that, and Adega Mountains, you can correct me on this if I'm wrong. It seems
You're
to
wrong.
me
We're
that
just correct you right now. You're wrong.
Funny. Adega brings the humor today. I appreciate it. I get the impression that in a lot of ways, the Minbari society is a lot freer in terms of how they treat their telepaths and how they treat one another. Even though they operate on a caste system and they have a clan system as well, I get the impression that they are a lot freer in how they treat their telepaths and how they treat each other, in a manner of speaking, than the Psi Corp does. Because you've got this very rigid, very, well, I hate to use this word, but it's not necessarily a bad word, dogmatic underpinning or foundation for the Psi Corp. Corp is mother, Corp is father. I'm sorry, that always bothers me. an organization should never take on the role of parent. An organization should take on the role of being a informer or a teacher, because, and I know that this is getting kind of heavy here, and I don't mean to go heavy, but with this particular episode, it almost leads you to the opportunity to go a bit heavy. But Psi Corp should have never been founded as such a rigid and dogmatic organization, but unfortunately, due to
Fear.
yes, fear from normal human beings who are not telepathic, this unfortunately happened. So, and to the chat, Jeff B, my old friend, good to see you, sir. And tech nabbit. That's a word I've not heard in a long time. But, honestly, this honestly is one of, as I've mentioned already, this is one of my favorite episodes from the season. And like I said, we're coming towards the end of the overture. And we're going to be, when we get into seasons 2 through 4, we're going into the main part of the symphony. And this is a great episode and everything to explore the Minbari culture, everything, and in particular with the burial of Shia Brimmer. And it gives you a snapshot. It gives you a little bit more. It pulls the curtain back just a little bit more on Minbari society, and in particular with the different casts. And I'll say this: I don't know if you fellas probably noticed this, or maybe you did or didn't, but when they were having the funeral procession for Bremer, when they first bring his body on board, and you've got the banner carriers at the front of the procession, did you notice that they actually allow women Minbari to be warriors?
Yeah, that's always been a thing. And it's a subtle thing.
Yes.
But when you look at them and their head bones, they tend to match what their station is in society. It's not just the men that have the more prominent and spiky head bones. Some of the women warrior casts have those as well. And none of the religious casts do, or almost none. They're always tame.
Yeah, and I think that goes. I think that would be a little bit of a wink and a nod to the ridges for the Klingons and everything, because if you notice, a lot of their ridges and everything on their foreheads oftentimes have a very aggressive look to them. So I think that might be just a little wink and a nod in terms of Straczynski paying homage to the Klingons from Star Trek.
It was just one thing as we're talking about, was it the Minbari? Did you notice that when Alyssa scanned the Narn, she had a huge problem, but nothing when she scanned Delenn? It was if, and I'm wondering, is that Delenn's heritage? Would that be with all Minbari, or was it just Delenn, the child of Valen?
And that, honestly, I don't know if maybe it's just because, well, this is a possibility and a little bit more foreshadowing. If you, I know we're kind of jumping ahead here, but we're also backtracking. You had human DNA intermingled with Minbari DNA. We just don't know this yet. So could it be possible the fact that Delenn is a great ancestor of Valen that made her mind in particular a little bit easier to scan? Or the fact that, if you think about it, Minbari minds might be a little more placid, a little more serene to scan and turn, and rather than a Narn mind.
Well, it could have all been the difference between scanning a religious caste versus a warrior caste. What is their prime motivation? What is it their drive? Where Narn, their drive is fairly obvious until Jakar starts figuring out what life really is about. But for the most part, they're all about we're tougher than you, and we're not going to take it from anyone.
Yeah, and that's entirely a possibility as well. And getting into the main part of this episode, talking about the whole matter of bringing this Minbari leader on board and everything, to have him lie in state and everything. There is. I can understand Nehru's thinking, and I can also understand Delenn's thinking, and neither one of them are necessarily wrong. Now, obviously, we find out later on in the episode that Bremer was first and foremost religious caste, but he took up the call to service during the Earth Minbari War, and he served in the Minbari military. And Nehru and everything, and Delenn discussed this. Bremer's father was a warrior caste, and his mother was religious. And I think that sets up a very interesting dynamic in terms of how Minbari society operates. And because you get the impression from Delenn's comment that due to Bremer's mother being religious caste, they have more of a, I hate to use the word claim, but I can't think of another word besides that, to how Bremer should be treated in death. So, fellas, anything you want to comment on that part?
There was one, I think, and it's on that team that Minbari don't lie, and yet Delenn forces Nehru to lie for them. It's just, I just thought of that there. And, another part of Minbari society, but I do actually, going back to the thing, I do believe it's the mother's line in the Minbari takes precedence, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But it is down to the individual, the calling of the heart, for which it could just as easy have decided to become a worker caste if that was his calling.
Well, and here's the thing, because Sinclair sums this up very succinctly and I think very eloquently. Let the warrior caste remember Bremer for who he was. Let the religious caste remember Bremer for who he was to them. And let both sides honor him in a way that is dignified for both and meaningful for both. So, any thoughts on that?
I think that's a lesson for our society. Let people honor things, without trying to grab it just for yourself. People have different ideas of the same character, and we should be open to having difference of opinion and being respectful of each other and respectful of tradition.
Mm-hmm.
It's just something that popped in there that's probably relevant for us more than in the universe.
I would agree with that, because we oftentimes and this is particularly true right now, I think, and I don't want to go super relevant. I want to stay on topic with the episode. But if you look at historical figures from not just the U.S.'s past, but from the history of the world, oftentimes there's two sides to every person. And every person is going to have a different type of legacy that the culture that surrounds them or the culture that comes after them is going to acknowledge. And right now, we as citizens of the United States, we're having to, in a lot of ways, say, yeah, this person may have done X that we did not approve of, but look at all the other good that this person did in their life. And should we really seek to tear down that person's image or effigy or statue just because of one or two things that we don't particularly approve of in our current context. I mean, I'll use one and everything, and then we'll get back on. We'll segue from there. There's a lot of argument over the statuary of Thomas Jefferson. Now, yes, we as citizens of the United States acknowledge this man was a slave owner. He did have children with his slaves.
No, he didn't.
He didn't? Okay.
He had slaves. Let me explain the history of it, because I know we're getting totally off topic, but
we'll
it has
segue
been
from here.
force-fed to us from wrong sources for a long time. The founding fathers that did have slaves, it was by law before they were able to break away that they could not get rid of their slaves. It was an offense from the British government. So if they were to sell them, that meant that they would basically putting them in jeopardy from some other person who could do them wrong. So they kept them, and they kept them very well. The DNA test that people said that showed that Jefferson had children to his slaves was faulty. It was his brother. It was further analyzed, and it showed that was all a lie, and it was perpetrated by some people to defame his record. So the truth of it is not what the narrative is being pushed. You got to dig deeper on a lot of these things that you hear, because most of the time it's wrong.
Okay. Well, Dega, thank you for correcting me. I appreciate that. But to kind of steer us back on course here and close out this particular segue. Yes, Jefferson was a slave owner. But yes, he was a founding father. He wrote the Declaration of Independence. Did he have to edit it, possibly, to appease a certain part of the colonies? Possibly. But should we tear him down just because he had slaves? The practice of slavery is an abominable one. It is a horrendous one. It is one that has more or less been wiped out from the face of the earth, thankfully. But I don't think canceling Jefferson solves the problem. It only stifles conversation. And to steer us back on course here in terms of this episode, later on in this season, or later on in the series, rather, we get into the discussion about the person who was Valen, Jeffrey Sinclair. One side of Minbari society reveres Valen. Well, all sides really revere him, but at the same time, they have almost become shackled to his legacy. They've become so rigid in their thinking of, we must follow everything that Valen said to the nth degree, rather than saying, yeah, this man did a lot. This man did a lot for us, but at the same time, we need to forge our own path forward. And I think this episode gives us a very strong snapshot of what is to come, because, as we've already said, this episode foreshadows a lot that is to come in the later seasons of B5. And in terms of the character of Brimmer, even though we never see him on screen, his legacy, which I think the titling for this episode was very apropos, his legacy is twofold. One, yes, he was a general or a leader during the Earth Minbari War. Pardon me. But he was also a man of peace. And I think both parts of the man should be recognized, not take one over the other. So
I actually imagine him to be like one of those two Minbari in season 5 who are training the new Rangers when they bring them to the station. When I'm picturing Bremer, that's how I imagine him to be. Kind of jovial, outside of the warrior, still the warrior, but jovial, spiritual, and the characters, I can't remember their names, but that's the sort of character I imagine him. As I said, I imagine him. And just as an aside, I'd love to have seen Sinclair's mission report, because he probably would have had to keep up the front for Delenn. And I'd like to have seen what he wrote back to EarthGov on this incident.
I'm pretty sure he would have gotten serious trouble for what he publicly signed for Naroon when at the very end he says, you know, what greater honor could this man receive from his enemy getting high praise, and I will sign it and make it public. And you know darn well there'll be people back in the EarthGov that would not have liked to have heard any of that coming from one of their officers.
Yes.
Yeah, because even though it's been 10 plus years since the end of the Earth-Minbari War, it's very evident on both sides that tensions still run high. I mean, when you see that Minbari cruiser come through the jump gate, and Garibaldi makes his comment about it, and then of course you have Sinclair having his flashback to the bow of the line. Excuse me, guys. And you see his squadron get splashed within a matter of seconds. Obviously, tensions still run high, and of course, we even have some tension right at the outset where the Minbari cruisers got their gun ports open, and you have Delenn and everything coming out to the command center of B5 and everything, and saying, "Guys, they're not targeting you. Their weapons aren't armed. They're just got their gun ports open." So,
I do wonder that. I mean, Sinclair and the senior staff certainly would have known about the gun ports open, as that was one of the causes of the Earth-Minbari War, a misunderstanding.
yeah.
But I imagine that the Minbari, also being aware, should have known, and the fact they approached gun ports open was especially provocative. So I'm just...
Yes.
I am wondering, because it did seem out of place from... I suppose if this was the first time you saw Babylon 5, the gun ports you may not know about it. But having seen the whole thing and going back, in universe they would have known. So that may have... It didn't seem to fit from their reaction, knowing what they knew. So I believe that it was a severe provocation, purposefully done by the Minbari warrior caste. Going back to what I said, more to get at Delenn than to antagonize the humans.
And that's a possibility as well, and everything, because obviously Delenn would know Minbari warrior protocol and what have you. I mean, being a member of the Great Council, she would have to. And, you know, this is one of the rare instances, one of the rare occurrences where we hear someone other than, when when Lanier comes on the station, that refers to Delenn by her Great Council title. And she's pulling weight, or she's pulling rank on Naroon here, and everything towards the end of this episode, and everything in terms of how everything's going to be handled in regards to Brimmer's burial and what's going to be done with his remains. So, but you know, the other, and I know this is just a small thing. We get introduced to another interesting race on the station, and that being the Pakmara. And the fact that you've got two different races of carrion eaters on board, and you're thinking, ew.
Yes.
That's got the ick factor, and the fact that Franklin makes the comment, do you realize how hard it is to get the stench of pumping Pakmara guts and everything out of getting that stench out of your clothing?
Their room decoration also left a lot to be desired when it was just strewn with bones and body parts. And
Well, yeah.
none of them were commenting. Was it Garibaldi didn't comment? And so this must just be a common thing for them.
Yeah, because they understand that the Pakmara are carrion eaters, so this is going to be something that's going to be very common to their quarters. So, again, ew. And
As
Dave,
disgusting as they were, they actually became a huge advantage to the Rangers later on.
this is true. I don't know the full story behind that, but I have heard things about in regards to that. So, and Dave G. Sound, thank you for bringing that up. Just was not to mention it was something I just reviewed, but yeah, that's a good point right there in terms of making a real life link to something fantastical. So, but well, fellas, I feel like I've kind of monopolize the discussion. I don't really mean to. Is there anything else or anything in particular that you want to cover in terms of this episode?
I'm just wondering about Delen's relationship with Minbari itself, because I know in future seasons she has to buy Universe Today to get information on Minbari. Because what does she say? They give you just the amount of information they think you need to know and no more.
Yeah,
So,
I think, and yeah, go ahead.
I'm just wondering, she's probably doing that as it is. And I know it hasn't come up yet, but that the Minbari, like you're saying, the split is coming in Minbari society, and I wonder how much information is she getting.
Very true. Well, and another interesting little piece. I imagine everybody that's hip to Babylon 5, if you notice that she was already starting to construct the device that will build her chrysalis later on at the end of the season 1.
And that's what the telepath had picked up on.
Yeah,
Right
Lisa Belding. Yeah, she because I think Lisa was in Delen's quarters. Or no, she was
it from her mind. She goes, "What does chrysalis mean?"
Yeah. Well, we know what a chrysalis is in terms of Earth biology, but
she was on a space station most of her life. She wouldn't have had the education about butterflies and larvae and how they cocoon themselves and become a new creature.
Yeah, very true. But I'll say this much and everything about this episode. It was handled, I think, exceedingly well, considering we know Seth Green's pedigree in a manner of speaking, or what he does a lot of times. But I'll say this for him. He does very well as a director and everything, in particular when he's working on sci-fi. Because this isn't the first time he's directed a B5 episode, and I don't think it's not the last time either. But I like the fact that even though not everybody's necessarily going to know who Bruce Seth Green is, later on and everything, we do find out. I will say this for Seth Green, he is an exceedingly talented gentleman. And I give him kudos and everything for his abilities as a director. So, and also DC Fontana for writing this episode. But that's just me. I'm fanboying a little bit because Seth Green's connected to Buffy and Austin Powers, and that's two things that I love.
I still think his best work was in Rat Race, but that's just me.
You know what? I actually remember that. I remember that movie. That's a movie that I know that might be one that I discuss next week and everything on bad movies that we love when I do that stream next week.
Oh, it's one of my favorite comedies. That and Tommy Boy. Those are number 1 and 2 for me.
I have actually never seen Tommy Boy, believe it or not.
You failed.
No, I haven't failed. I just haven't gotten around to it. I haven't gotten around to it yet.
You're not the only one, neither have I.
I don't know what I'm doing with you, gentlemen. I can't even call you gentlemen. I'm going to leave in disgust now.
Ha ha ha. Funny. Funny. Well, fellas, unless there's something else you want to cover, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. And
Just one small thing. It's nice to
Sure.
see Talia and Ivanova coming closer, especially as I say, Ivanova loathes telepaths, but she's not only willing to, if I heard describe, nod at Talia, she's now going to go for coffee with her, even after they had a really antagonistic meeting over Alyssa.
Now,
Which
see,
I-
that's the one thing out of this entire episode I found most unbelievable. Someone who has been so against, and you guys, your opinion's completely correct for you, but for me, I couldn't see that. I don't see how someone who had a lifetime of trauma because of the Psi Corp just had a fight with a woman over whether or not this girl was going to be in the Psi Corp, and all of a sudden, oh, let's go have coffee. I just can't see that. Not in a woman. Maybe a guy, but not a woman, especially after a fist fight.
And Adega, I can see your point as well, and there's no error in it. I mean, it can sometimes be difficult to see two people who have been at each other's throats for so long kind of drop their fists, or at least on one end, the other person dropping their fists. You know.
Sorry, but
Go
I
ahead.
wonder if that's been happening already, because in the previous episode, Mr. Gray was talking about her and saying, "You've been thinking about Talia." I mentioned. So I think it has been building. There has been seeds laid. So it's not, for me, sudden. If it was just sudden here without anything in the past, it probably would be a bit too fast. But there is history building. And it's something I like about B5. Little seeds or breadcrumbs are dropped in one episode that you wouldn't notice, or doesn't come to itself for a couple of episodes or a couple of seasons.
Yeah, and that's honestly mountains. That's a very good observation, because you do have that interaction between Ivanova and Mr. Gray in the previous episode, and you could draw the inference that maybe that did soften Ivanova's stance to the Psi Corp at least a little bit, or at least in terms of Talia, because Susan up until this point has not had a positive interaction, or even a borderline positive interaction with someone from the Psi Corp. And with Mr. Gray, she has. Even though she doesn't fully trust him, she comes to realize that everybody that's attached to the Psi Corp isn't a dirty, greasy scumbag like Alfred Bester. So, and I mean, let's be honest here. Ivanova got her own shots in and everything on Talia and everything when they were fighting over Alyssa and everything, because she brings up Jason Ironheart, and that really triggers Talia. And I think it was deliberate, because I think Susan knows how to push people's buttons. I mean, for heaven's sakes, she is Russian. So, but and I kind of skirted this issue when I was talking about Susan Ivanova several months ago and everything, when I started doing my character studies or my character discussions of the main cast, of the main characters. I was not necessarily uncomfortable about the idea of I'll just call it what it is, a romance between Ivanova and Talia. But for me, that was, to me anyways, that was a minor plot point that they never really went full bore into. The only other time we get any reference to any feelings of that sort is in the episode where the command staff takes up the new uniforms. They put away their Earth Force uniforms and they take up the new uniforms that Delenn has designed for them. And when when Susan says to Delenn there in Medbay, "I think I was in love with Talia," it leaves it at that. So that particular plot point wasn't a problem for me. I'm not trying to sound like any degree of a homophobe because I'm not one. But it'll be interesting to see how it plays out and everything in the next season. So, but anyway, well, guys, thank you all for your patience. Thank you all for being here. Adaga Mountains, this is always a highlight of my week. So I appreciate y'all being on with me once again. And folks, like I said, we're coming towards the finish line on season 1. So to quote Mr. Arnold from Jurassic Park, hold on to your butts. It only gets wilder from here. So, guys, anything you want to plug before we close out?
Can't think of anything. No.
I'm good. There's just 2 new people in chat, so just to say hello to them was Eli Hernandez.
Elihu.
Oh, Elihu. Good to see you. Yeah, Elihu and Eastland Burkholder. Eastland, you got to find a different name, son. I'm just saying. I'm saying that to tease a little bit.
You gotta watch Elihu when in chat, because when he starts rolling, he becomes the funniest man you'll ever meet. Or at least in chat, anyways.
I know.
Hilarious.
I know. I've seen him on DJ Odyssey's streams and everything, or at least the few the ones I was in and everything back when he had this 48-hour stream. Well, folks, we're going ahead and close out and everything for this afternoon. I thank you all for being here. Update on the channel. I will be having an installment of Afternoons with the Ambassador this Friday. Going to be talk about something kind of important, something kind of fun and everything. So be sure to tune in for that. And then, of course, this weekend I will be back with the Saturday nights, 7:30 Central Time with the Ambassadorial Wing, where I'll be joined by my good friend Enosh Fed from Poindexter Lounge. And we're going to be talking about, one of the big parts of the 80s pop culture, G.I. Joe and Transformers. So be sure to tune in for that. I'll also be joined by my good friend, Mr. Mir from 10 Forward Lounge. So be sure to keep your eyes and ears out for that. And then, of course, make sure you subscribe to these 2 guys' channels. And if you have not gone out and gotten the Dega's book, if it's in stock, go get you a copy. It is a great read. It really is.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. You've earned it in spades. So, well, folks, y'all have a great day. I will see you Friday afternoon. And until next time, this is the Ambassadors signing off.